My wife sent a message in the family group inviting everyone to the party except me. She wrote, "All the men here are successful except you. You chose to be a simple teacher, and I don't consider you my husband anymore." I didn't confront her. I just left quietly. A few months later, when the governor said my name in front of hundreds of people, she was there, and her face, when she understood what she'd lost. I'll never forget that. But let me tell you from the beginning, because this story needs you to understand every detail of how we got to that point. If you've ever been made to feel small for who you are, if your worth was measured only by money, then this is for you. Leave me a comment if you've lived through something like this. My name's Julian, I'm 46 years old, and I've been teaching history for 20 years. For me, every student who understands a lesson is a triumph. For Veronica, my wife, every day I continued to be a teacher was a humiliation she had to endure. We'd been married for 15 years when everything started to fall apart. Or maybe it was always broken and I didn't want to see it. She worked in an advertising agency, surrounded by people with expensive cars, designer clothes, trips to Europe. Every summer, I drove a 2008 car, and my vacations were staying home reading books about World War II. Veronica's cousin Franco was a businessman. He had an import company that, according to him, billed $500,000 a year. Every time we saw each other at family gatherings, Franco would arrive in suits that cost more than my monthly salary. Veronica would look at him with something that wasn't just admiration, it was envy, it was desire, it was everything I couldn't give her. The first signs were so small, I ignored them, thinking I was exaggerating. One day I came home after a long day at school. I'd had a particularly difficult class with third-year students who didn't want to hear anything about the French Revolution. I walked in tired, wanting to tell her how I finally managed to get their attention with an anecdote about Marie Antoinette. Veronica was in the living room with her sister Rosalia. When I came in, they both stopped talking. That awkward silence that tells you they were talking about you. Rosalia greeted me with a forced smile and left 5 minutes later. I asked Veronica what they were talking about. She looked at me with those cold eyes I was starting to know too well and said, "Women's stuff. Nothing that would interest you." But I'd heard my name before I opened the door. I knew it then, and I know it now. The second sign was at her father Pedro's birthday dinner. The whole family was gathered in an elegant downtown restaurant. Franco arrived with his wife Paula. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress that surely cost more than my rent. Veronica wore a simple black dress I'd given her 2 years ago. Throughout the dinner, I saw how she looked at Paula's dress, how she gripped her silverware, how she forced every smile. Franco started talking about his new car, a latest model Mercedes. Everyone at the table listened fascinated as he described every detail, every luxury, every feature he'd probably never use. I tried to join the conversation by mentioning I'd read an interesting article about the history of Mercedes-Benz and its connection to the war. Franco interrupted me mid-sentence. "Julian, buddy, nobody wants a history lesson at dinner." Everyone laughed, including Veronica, especially Veronica. That laugh wasn't supportive, it was ashamed. Ashamed of being married to me. That night in the car on the way home, we didn't talk. The silence was so thick I could feel it pressing against my chest. When we got to the apartment, she went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the sofa we'd bought together when we first got married, wondering at what point I'd become the enemy. But that still wasn't the worst part. It wasn't even close. The following months were a collection of small cruelties. Veronica started introducing me differently. Before, she'd say, "This is Julian, my husband." Now she'd say, "This is Julian, he teaches." As if that was all I was, as if 20 years of dedication could be reduced to 2 words said with disdain. She stopped asking me how my day was. She stopped being interested in my students and the stories I brought home, in the small triumphs we used to celebrate together. When I spoke, she looked at her phone. When I tried to touch her hand, she'd pull it away with the excuse that she had to do something urgent. One night, I found a piece of paper in the trash. It was a list written in her handwriting. It said things Franco has: own house, new car, trips, investments, respect, and below it with smaller handwriting, almost ashamed to exist, things Julian has, books. I didn't say anything to her. I kept that paper in my wallet. I still have it. It reminds me that pain sometimes comes from the people who swore never to hurt you. Then May came, the month that changed everything. The month Franco announced he was throwing a party at his new house, a mansion, according to him, in an exclusive residential area. Veronica talked about nothing else. She bought a new pearl-colored dress, new shoes. She got treatments at the salon. She spent almost $500 to look perfect for a party. I assumed we'd go together. We were husband and wife after all. 15 years of marriage had to mean something. I thought naively 3 days before the party I was preparing classes in my small home office when my phone vibrated. It was a notification from the family's WhatsApp group, the group, where everyone was Pedro, Rosalia, Franco, Paula, the uncles, the cousins, everyone except me. I'd never been in that group. The message was from Veronica. I know because someone I don't know who sent me a screenshot. Maybe it was her cousin Laura, who was always kind to me. Maybe it was someone who felt I deserved to know the truth. The message said exactly this, and I remember it word for word because I read it 100 times that night. Dear family, I'm expecting you all on Saturday at Franco's house. It's going to be an amazing night. I just want to clarify something. Only those who have truly achieved something in life should come. All the men here are successful. Except one. Julian chose to be a simple teacher, and I don't consider him my husband anymore. So please, this invitation is not for him. I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable by his presence. I read that message at 11 at night. Veronica was in the bedroom watching a series. I was in the office with the screenshot glowing in the dark of the room. My hands were shaking, not with rage, with something much worse, with understanding, with that terrible moment when you finally understand that the person you love despises you. I didn't go into the bedroom that night. I stayed sitting in my chair looking at the books on the shelves, the diplomas on the wall, the photos of students who had written me thank you letters over the years, and I wondered when being a teacher became being less than nothing. The next morning I woke up on the living room sofa. My neck hurt, and I still had the screenshot open on my phone. Veronica came out of the bedroom dressed in her expensive gym clothes, her hair perfectly tied back. She looked at me the way you look at an old piece of furniture you don't know where to put anymore. I'm going to work out with Rosalia, she said without waiting for a response. The door closed, and I was still there holding the evidence of my own invisibility. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick. It wasn't a lie. Something inside me was sick. Maybe it had been sick for years, and I'd been too busy loving someone who no longer loved me. I spent the day reviewing my life like someone reviewing a failed exam, looking for where I went wrong. I opened my desk drawer and found things I'd forgotten. Letters from students. One said, "Professor Julian, thank you for not giving up on me. You're the reason I didn't drop out of school." Another, "No one had ever taught me that history could be interesting until I came to your class." I had 32 letters like that, 32 lives that according to them I had touched in some way, but for Veronica, that didn't count. To her, I was just a man with no ambition who earned $800 a month, while Franco billed $500,000 a year. That afternoon, while I was putting the letters away, I found something else. Our wedding photos. I was 25 years old in those pictures, she was 22. We were both smiling as if the future was a beautiful promise. There was a picture where she looked at me with genuine admiration. I'd just graduated with honors from college. She'd told me that night, "You're going to change the world, Julian. You're going to be the best teacher this country has ever had." When did that look change? When did admiration turn into contempt? Veronica returned at 6 in the evening. She was carrying shopping bags. More clothes for the party, I assumed. She came in without saying hello, went straight to the bedroom. I was in the kitchen making coffee when she appeared at the door. "I need you to leave on Saturday," she said bluntly, without apologies, without explanations. I looked at her steadily. I saw the group message. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, guilt. It lasted less than a second. Then that coldness I knew so well returned. "Then you already know why," she replied. "I don't want you there embarrassing me in front of my family. Franco is going to have important guests, people with real money, people who've built something. You just have your books and your students who write you little letters." "Those students are people," I said in a voice I almost didn't recognize as my own. "People whose lives I might have made a little better." She let out a bitter laugh. "Making lives better. Wake up, Julian. Making lives better doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't buy houses. It doesn't earn respect. Franco is 26, and he already has a mansion. You're 46, and we're still renting this mediocre apartment. I chose a profession I love." I said I thought that mattered. "That's what losers say to justify their failure," she replied. Her words were knives. "Look at Franco, look at Felipe, my cousin's husband. He's a dentist and earns $3,000 a month. Look at Jairo, Paula's brother. He has a construction company. All of them are real men with ambition. And then there's you getting excited because a 15-year-old kid said, 'Thank you.'" I stayed quiet, not because I had nothing to say, but because I understood in that moment that there was nothing I could say that would change her mind. To her, I was already dead. All that was left was to bury the body. I won't be here on Saturday. I said finally, don't worry. She felt satisfied as if I'd just made a tedious task easier for her and went back to the bedroom. That night I slept on the sofa again, but I didn't really sleep. I stayed awake staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city through the window, wondering how I'd gotten to this point. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of believing we were building something together. And it all came down to this. I didn't earn enough money to be considered her husband. The following days were strange. Veronica acted as if nothing had happened. She talked on the phone with Rosalia about the party arrangements. She tried on her new dress in front of the mirror. She practiced smiles. I moved around the apartment like a ghost. She didn't see me. I no longer existed for her. On Thursday night, 2 days before the party, I was grading exams at the dining table when I heard her voice from the bedroom. She was on the phone with someone. The door was ajar. No, I already told him not to go, she was saying. Yes, I know we're technically still married, but that's just a piece of paper. In my heart, I don't have a husband anymore. Franco asked me if I was bringing someone, and I told him I was going alone, that I had freed myself from that burden. There was a pause. Then she laughed. That laugh I used to love to hear now sounded like breaking glass. Exactly, Rosalia. Exactly. Why carry someone who only drags you down? All the women there will arrive with successful men. I'm not going to be the only one who arrives with a schoolteacher who smells like chalk and earns a pittance. I closed my grade book. My hands were shaking again, but this time it was different. It wasn't pain, it was clarity. That terrible clarity that comes when you finally accept the truth. I stood up silently. I went to our shared bedroom and took a suitcase out of the closet. Veronica was still on the phone, now talking about which shoes she was going to wear. She didn't see me come in, or maybe she saw me and didn't care. I started packing. Clothes, some books, important documents, the letters from my students, everything that really mattered fit into one suitcase and 2 boxes. 20 years of life reduced to that. I worked all night. At 3 in the morning I was done. Veronica was sleeping soundly in the bedroom. I wrote a short note and left it on the kitchen table. It just said this: I'm giving you what you wanted. Your freedom. Be happy with successful men. I'm leaving with my dignity. I carried my things to my old car. 3 trips. On the last one I stood at the apartment door looking inside. 15 years of memories. 15 years of believing in something that maybe never existed. I closed the door without making a sound and left. I drove aimlessly for an hour until sunrise. I ended up in a cheap hotel near the school where I worked. The room cost $30 a night. It had a bed, a small bathroom, a window that looked out onto an alley. It was perfect, it was mine. It was a place where no one would measure me by money. On Friday, I worked as usual. My students noticed something different about me, but they didn't ask. I gave my classes on the Industrial Revolution with the same passion as always because that was the one thing Veronica couldn't take from me. My love for teaching. My love for seeing that spark of understanding in a student's eyes when they finally understand something complicated. After classes, my colleague Laura stopped me in the hallway. Laura taught literature and had always been kind to me. She was a 43-year-old woman divorced with 2 kids. We'd become friends over coffee in the teacher's lounge. Julian, are you okay? She asked. You look tired. I'm fine, I lied. She looked at me with those eyes that know when someone is lying. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but if you need a place to stay, my sofa is available. It's more comfortable than a hotel. I was surprised. How did you know about the hotel? Because I know you, she said simply. And because I've been where you are now. I accepted her offer. That night, I had dinner with Laura and her kids in a modest but lively apartment. There was laughter. There were questions about homework. There was warmth, things my own home had stopped having years ago. Saturday dawned, the day of Franco's party, the day Veronica would celebrate her freedom from me, surrounded by successful men. I spent that day helping Laura's son with his science project. I didn't try to find out how the party was. I didn't check social media. I didn't ask, but the information came on its own, as it always does when you don't want it. On Monday morning, while I was having coffee in the teacher's lounge before my first class, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a photo. The photo showed Veronica at the party in her pearl-colored dress, smiling next to Franco and his important guests. She looked radiant, she looked free, she looked exactly like someone who had just gotten rid of a problem. The message said, I thought you should know that she's telling everyone you're already divorced, that you left her because you couldn't stand her success. Take care, Julian. Laura, the cousin. I put my phone away. Laura, my colleague, came in at that moment with 2 cups of coffee. She knew me well enough to know something had happened. More news? She asked, sitting across from me. I showed her the photo without saying anything. She looked at it and shook her head. People always rewrite history to be the hero of their own narrative. She's not my problem anymore, I said. And I meant it. Have you started the divorce process yet? Laura asked. Not yet, but I will this week. That afternoon after classes, I went to a lawyer, an older man named Jairo, who had been recommended by another teacher. His office was small but tidy. He listened to me tell the whole story without interrupting. You have the message where she says she doesn't consider you her husband, he said finally. That helps. The process will be quick if she cooperates, and from what you've told me, I'm sure she'll want to sign as soon as possible. He was right. When the papers reached Veronica 3 days later, she signed everything in less than 24 hours. She didn't even ask for anything. She just wanted me to disappear from her life legally, as I had already disappeared emotionally. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. 6 weeks to undo 15 years. She kept the apartment we rented. I kept my old car, my books, and my dignity. It seemed like a fair deal to me. During those months, I lived with Laura and her kids. I paid rent, helped with expenses. I became something like family. Her sons Brian, who was 14, and Felipe, who was 11, started asking me for help with their homework. I taught them history the same way I taught at school, turning every lesson into an exciting story. Professor Julian, Brian said to me one night, while we were doing his homework on the Civil War, "Why did you choose to be a teacher? My mom says teachers don't make much money." I thought about the question. I thought about Veronica and her obsession with money. I thought about Franco and his Mercedes. I thought about all the times they made me feel small for my choice. I chose to be a teacher, I told him, because when I was your age, I had a teacher who made me believe I could be someone important. I come from a poor family. My father worked in construction. My mother cleaned houses. No one in my family had gone to college. But my history teacher, Mr. Marquez, told me I had something special. He helped me get a scholarship. He taught me that knowledge is the only power no one can take from you. And I decided I wanted to do that for other kids. I wanted to be for someone what he was for me. Brian looked at me with those eyes full of admiration I hadn't seen in a long time. That's cool, he said simply. Laura was at the kitchen door. I don't know how long she'd been there listening, but when our eyes met, she smiled. A real smile. The kind that heals. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year. I was still teaching, still living with Laura and her kids, still being the same Julian as always, but something had changed inside me. I no longer carried the weight of not being enough for someone. I no longer measured my worth by someone else's yardstick. One afternoon after classes, the school principal called me to her office. Her name was Isabella, a 55-year-old woman who had dedicated her entire life to education. I had always respected her enormously. "Julian, sit down," she said with a seriousness that made me nervous. "I want to propose something to you." I sat across from her desk, expecting the worst. Budget cuts, maybe, or changes in the curriculum. "I've been watching your work for years," she continued. "The way you connect with students, especially those who come from difficult families. You have a gift for that, and I think that gift shouldn't be limited to this school." I didn't understand where she was going. "What do you mean?" "There's a pilot program the state government wants to implement. Education for marginalized communities. They want to bring teachers to rural areas, poor neighborhoods, places where kids don't have access to quality education. They need someone to design the program, to lead it, to make it work." I immediately thought of you. My heart started beating faster. "Are you offering me to run that program?" "Not just run it. I want you to build it from scratch. You'd have a team, of budget, creative freedom. It's not a lot of money, maybe $2,200 a month, but it's the opportunity to do exactly what you just told Brian. To be for hundreds of kids what Mr. Marquez was for you." I didn't think twice. "I accept." Isabella smiled. "I knew you'd say yes. You start in 2 weeks. Get ready, Julian. This is going to change your life." That night, I told Laura. She prepared a special dinner to celebrate. Brian and Felipe were excited. "Are you going to be like an education superhero?" Felipe asked. We all laughed, but deep down that's how I felt. The program started small, me and 3 other teachers. We visited communities where the schools were half-collapsed buildings, where kids walked 2 hours to get to class, where teachers earned $300 a month and still kept teaching because they loved what they did. I spent my days traveling to remote towns, implementing new methodologies, training local teachers, getting donations of books and materials. It was exhausting. I slept in cheap hotels, ate what I could find, came home to Laura only on weekends, but I was happy. For the first time in years, I was genuinely happy. After 6 months, the program had reached 12 communities. 500 students had access to better education thanks to our work. We started getting attention from local media. Small newspapers wrote about the program that was changing lives in forgotten areas. Isabella called me every week to review progress. Julian, this is working better than we imagined. The governor is impressed. He wants to expand the program statewide. A year after the divorce, my life was unrecognizable. I no longer lived with Laura. I'd gotten a small apartment near the program's office. Laura and I had grown closer. We had dinner together twice a week. Her kids still called me Professor Julian and asked me for help with difficult homework. I hadn't heard anything from Veronica, not a message, not a call, nothing. It was as if those 15 years of marriage had never existed, and it was okay. I had built a new life, a life that had meaning. But then 2 years after that night, I read the message from the family group. I received a call that would change everything. It was Isabella. She sounded excited, almost breathless. Julian, you have to come to my office right now. Something incredible just happened. I arrived at Isabella's office 20 minutes later. She was standing by the window with a letter in her hands. When I entered, she turned with a smile I'd never seen on her. Julian, sit down, she said. This is big. I sat down, feeling a mix of curiosity and nervousness. She placed the letter in front of me. It was an official document with the state government seal. Read, she ordered. My eyes scanned the paper. It was an official notification. The program we had built had been selected to receive the state award for excellence in education. The governor herself would present it at a public ceremony in 3 weeks, and I was nominated as the program's creator and director. Isabella, this. I couldn't find the words. It's the most important recognition that exists in education at the state level, she said with pride. Julian, in 2 years, you transformed the lives of more than 2,000 students in 40 communities. You trained 120 teachers. You secured donations worth $300,000. This award is yours. You deserve it. I felt something warm in my chest. It wasn't pride, it was validation. Years of hearing I wasn't enough, that being a teacher was being a loser, that choosing education was choosing failure. And now the ceremony will be broadcast on state television, Isabella continued. There will be politicians, business people, media. It's a major event. You can bring whoever you want as a guest. I immediately thought of Laura. She had been my support during the darkest times. She deserved to be there. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. Journalists contacted me for interviews. They wanted to know about the program, about my story, about my motivation. I was careful with what I shared. I mentioned my divorce only briefly, without giving names, without details. I went through a difficult time, I'd say, but that moment taught me that a person's true worth isn't measured by money. One of those interviews appeared in the state's main newspaper. It included my photo and a headline that said, "The teacher who chose dignity over money and now transforms thousands of lives." The article mentioned my age, my career, the fact that I was divorced, and how I had turned a painful moment into fuel to help others. Laura read the article on her phone during breakfast one morning. We were in a coffee shop near the school. "Julian, this is going to have repercussions," she said with concern in her voice. "What do you mean your ex-wife is going to see this? Your former in-laws are going to see this. And when people without character see someone they despise succeeding, they always come back." I didn't pay much attention to it. Then I was too busy preparing for the ceremony, reviewing my speech, coordinating details with the program team. But Laura was right. 5 days before the ceremony, I received a message from a number I hadn't saved, but recognized immediately. It was Veronica. The message said, "Julian, I saw the news about your award. Congratulations. I'm very happy you're doing important things. Can we talk?" I read it 3 times. I looked for signs of sincerity. I found none. I only saw opportunism. I didn't reply. The next day, I received another message. This one was longer. "I know things ended badly between us. I was hard on you, and now I understand I was wrong. I always knew you were special, Julian. I was just frustrated by other things in my life. Do you think we could see each other? I'd like to talk to you in person." I still didn't reply. The third message arrived 2 days later. "Julian, please, I need to talk to you. I've changed a lot in these 2 years. I've reflected on us, on what we lost. I saw your interview and realized I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go. Is there any chance we could try again?" I showed the messages to Laura. That night, we were in my apartment reviewing the final details of the ceremony. "Classic," she said with disgust. "When you were a simple teacher, you were worthless. Now that you're in the newspapers and going to receive an award from the governor, suddenly you're special. I'm not going to answer, I said. Good, but be prepared. People like that don't give up easily. She was right again. A day before the ceremony, while I was in a final meeting with Isabella and the program team, my phone rang. It was a number from the state government's communications department. Mr. Julian, said a professional woman's voice. This is Carmen from the governor's events team. We have a somewhat delicate situation. What happened? We received a request from a person who claims to be your wife, Veronica Martinez. She's asking for access to tomorrow's ceremony as your guest. She says you're reconciling, and it would be important for her to be present. I felt a mix of disbelief and anger. Veronica is not my wife. We divorced 2 years ago. She has no right to be at that ceremony. Understood, sir. We just wanted to confirm with you before denying the request. Your official guest is Mrs. Laura Hernandez. Correct. Correct. Perfect. Then we'll proceed to reject Mrs. Martinez's request. Sorry for the inconvenience. I hung up and looked at Isabella, who had heard my side of the conversation. Your ex-wife is trying to sneak into the ceremony, she asked with raised eyebrows. Apparently so. Isabella let out a dry laugh. How convenient that she now wants to be your wife after you're receiving public recognition. That night, I barely slept, not because of nerves about the event, but thinking about Veronica's audacity. 2 years without a word, 2 years in which she went on with her life, surrounded by successful men like Franco. And now, because my name was going to be mentioned by the governor, because I was going to appear on television, because suddenly I had something she could proudly show off, now she wanted to come back. But I was no longer the Julian who stayed quiet. I was no longer the man who accepted being treated as less than nothing. These 2 years had taught me something fundamental. My worth didn't depend on anyone else's opinion. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up early. I put on the only suit. I had a dark gray one I'd bought on sale 3 years ago. Laura arrived at 9. She wore an elegant emerald green dress, simple but beautiful. You look gorgeous, I told her. You look good too, she replied with a smile, nervous, a little, mostly anxious for this to be over, so I can get back to the real work. We drove together to the convention center where the ceremony would be. The place was impressive, a huge hall with capacity for 500 people. There were television cameras, photographers, reporters. On the stage there was a giant screen and a podium with the state seal. Isabella met us at the entrance. Julie and Laura, come in. Everyone's arriving. The governor wants to meet you before the event starts. She took me to a private room where the governor was with her team. She was a 60-year-old woman, also named Isabella. Isabella Rodriguez, known for her work in education before entering politics. Professor Julian, she said, shaking my hand firmly. I've read a lot about your work. What you've achieved in 2 years is extraordinary. We need more people like you in this state. Thank you, Governor. It's an honor. We talked for 10 minutes about the program, about my future plans, about how we could expand it even further. She was genuine, asked intelligent questions. She really understood the importance of what we were doing. One more thing before we go out, she said. I read about your divorce in one of the interviews. You mentioned your ex-wife didn't value your profession. That's right, I replied without going into detail. How ironic, she said with a sly smile, because we received a request from her to be present today. A request that, of course, was rejected following your instructions. Thank you for that. Don't thank me. People like that always show up when they see success. But I want you to know something, Julian. What you do teaching, transforming lives, that's real success. Money comes and goes, expensive cars get old, but a child who learns to believe in themselves because of a good teacher, that lasts forever. Her words hit me deeply. That's exactly what I believe, Governor. Then go out there and receive this award with your head held high. You've earned it. The ceremony began at 11 in the morning. The hall was completely full. I recognized many faces: teachers, school principals, education officials, journalists. Laura was sitting in the front row next to Isabella, my principal. And then, as the master of ceremonies was giving the welcome, I saw something that made my blood run cold. In the 5th row on the left side were Veronica, Franco, Paula, Rosalia, and Pedro. All of them the whole family that had excluded me from that party 2 years ago. Veronica was staring at me. She was wearing an ivory-colored dress, elegant, expensive. Her expression was a mix of feigned regret and real desperation. They had gotten in, I don't know how, maybe with general tickets that were available to the public, maybe with contacts, it didn't matter, they were there. And something told me this wasn't going to end quietly. Laura followed my gaze and saw Veronica. She turned to me with concern, but I gave her a hand signal that I was fine. I wasn't going to let her presence ruin this moment. They didn't have that power over me anymore. The Master of Ceremonies continued with the program. There were several awards to be given before mine. Recognitions to schools' literacy programs, community initiatives. I applauded each one, trying to concentrate, but I felt Veronica's eyes fixed on the back of my neck. During one of the videos they were showing on the giant screen, I took the opportunity to turn around discreetly. Veronica wasn't the only one looking at me. Franco too, but his expression was different. There was something there that wasn't regret, it was envy. That same envy Veronica used to have for him, now he had it for me. Finally the moment came. The Master of Ceremonies announced, and now the most important recognition of the afternoon, the State Award for Excellence in Education. This year this honor goes to a program that in just 2 years has transformed the lives of more than 2,000 students in marginalized communities. The screen lit up with a video about our work. Images of children in remote schools, of teachers receiving training, of communities celebrating the arrival of new educational materials. There were interviews with students talking about how the program had changed their lives. An 11-year-old girl said to the camera, "Before I walked 2 hours to get to a school where there were no books. Now we have a full library and teachers who really teach us. I want to be a doctor when I grow up, and now I know I can achieve it." I felt a lump in my throat. That was the reason. That girl, those 2,000 children, not the applause, not the recognition, not the moment to prove something to Veronica, but them. The video ended and the Master of Ceremonies continued. The creator and director of this program is a man who has dedicated 20 years of his life to education. A man who chose a path that many don't value, but which is fundamental for the future of our state. Please welcome with a big round of applause Professor Julian Marquez. I stood up. The entire hall was applauding. I walked towards the stage, feeling each step as if I were walking on clouds. I went up the stairs and Governor Isabella was waiting for me with a plaque in her hands and that warm smile I had seen in the private room. She handed me the plaque. We took pictures. The flashes from the cameras were blinding. Then she approached the microphone. "Professor Julian," she said, her voice echoing throughout the hall. "Before you say a few words, I want to add something personal." She turned to the audience. When I reviewed this man's story, I discovered something I thought was important to share. 2 years ago, Julian went through a difficult divorce. His wife left him because she considered that being a teacher wasn't enough, that a man who earned less than $2,000 a month didn't deserve respect. The hall fell into absolute silence. I didn't expect this. The governor continued. That woman measured this man's worth with money. She chose image over substance, and today that same woman is here in this hall, sitting in the 5th row, having tried a few days ago to claim her place as Julian's wife. All eyes turned to Veronica. She turned completely pale. Franco was looking at the floor. Paula and Rosalia didn't know where to look. The governor wasn't finished. "Do you know how many lives this man has transformed in 2 years? More than 2,000. Do you know how many teachers he has trained? 120. Do you know how much economic value he has generated for forgotten communities? More than $300,000 in educational resources." She paused deliberately. "So I have a question for everyone here. What is success? Is it having an expensive car and a big house? Or is it changing the future of 2,000 children who had no chance?" The silence was deafening. Then someone in the back started to clap. Then another and another. In seconds, the entire hall was on its feet applauding. Everyone except 5 people in the 5th row. The governor handed me the microphone. I had a speech prepared, something formal about education and social commitment, but in that moment, I decided to speak from the heart. "Thank you, Governor." I began. My voice trembled slightly. "I didn't expect you to share my personal story, but I'm grateful you did, because there's something I need to say." I took a deep breath. For 15 years, I was married to a woman I loved deeply, but that love wasn't enough for her, because I chose a profession that doesn't generate material wealth. And that's okay. Everyone has the right to decide what they value in life. I looked directly at where Veronica was. She had her head down, but I forced her to listen to every word. "But what's not okay is to measure a human being's worth exclusively by money. What's not okay is to humiliate someone for choosing to serve instead of accumulate. What's not okay is to despise a teacher while you enjoy the benefits of living in an educated society." My voice became firmer. 2 years ago, my ex-wife sent a message in the family group saying I wasn't worthy of being at a party because I was a simple teacher. Those were her exact words, simple teacher. I took my phone out of my pocket. I still have the screenshot of that message. The date is May 18th, 2024. The message said, and I quote verbatim, "All the men here are successful except one. Julian chose to be a simple teacher, and I don't consider him my husband anymore." Veronica snapped her head up. Her eyes were full of tears, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were of shame and panic. I didn't respond to that message. I continued. I didn't make a scene, I didn't confront her, I simply packed my things and left because I understood something fundamental that night. I understood that my worth didn't depend on someone else's opinion. I understood that being a teacher isn't being simple, it's being fundamental. The hall was completely silent. You could hear the collective breath of 500 people. 2 years later, when my name appeared in the newspapers when this award became public, that same woman who said I wasn't worthy sent me messages asking for a second chance, saying she always knew I was special, saying she made a mistake. I put my phone away, but here's the truth. I was always special, I was always valuable, I was always important, not because a governor gave me an award, not because I was on television, but because every day for 20 years I stood in front of students and taught them that they are valuable too, that their background doesn't determine their destiny, that knowledge is power. I looked at the governor. This award doesn't make me more valuable than I was 2 years ago when my ex-wife discarded me. This award simply makes visible something that was always there. The silent impact of thousands of teachers who every day transform lives without expecting recognition. Tears were now running freely down my face. And I want to dedicate this award to all those invisible teachers, to those who earn $1,000 a month and still buy school supplies with their own money. To those who walk miles to get to rural schools, to those who are called simple by people who don't understand that educating is the most complex and most important act that exists. I raised the plaque. This award is for you and for my teacher, Mr. Marquez, who taught me that I could be someone important. He died 5 years ago, but his legacy lives on in every student I've touched and in every student those students will touch in the future. That's immortality, that's real success. I lowered the plaque and said the last words looking directly at Veronica, the person who called me simple. Thank you, because your rejection forced me to prove to myself what I was worth, and I discovered I was worth much more than you could ever see. The applause was thunderous. People were crying, teachers were hugging each other. The governor hugged me too, whispering in my ear. That was perfect. I came down from the stage. Laura was waiting for me with open arms. She hugged me tightly, not caring about the cameras or the people. "I'm so proud of you," she said through tears. Isabella, my principal, was also crying. "Julian, you just gave the most important speech I've heard in 30 years of my career," but my eyes were searching for the fifth row. Veronica was no longer there. None of them were. They had fled like rats when you turn on the light. The ceremony continued with other events, but I barely paid attention. I was in a sort of emotional trance. Journalists surrounded me afterwards. They wanted interviews, statements, photos. A reporter asked me, "Professor Julian, what would you say to your ex-wife now if you had her in front of you?" I thought about the question. I thought about all the pain, all the humiliation, all the nights feeling less than nothing. I would say thank you. I replied honestly, because her rejection freed me from living for someone else's expectations. It taught me that true love doesn't put conditions on your profession or your bank account, and it showed me exactly the kind of person I never want to be. The ceremony ended around 3 in the afternoon. Laura, Isabella, and I went to a quiet restaurant to celebrate. We ordered simple food, nothing extravagant, because that was my life now, simple, but full of meaning. "How do you feel?" Laura asked while we waited for the food. "Honestly, I don't know," I replied, relieved, I think, as if I'd closed a chapter that had been open for 2 years. Isabella smiled. "What you set up there was brave, Julian. Many people keep that kind of pain silent their whole lives." I didn't want to expose her, I explained. But when the governor mentioned my story, I knew it was time to speak my truth, not for revenge, but for all the teachers who are treated as if their work doesn't matter. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages from colleagues, from ex-students, from teachers I had trained in the program. They all said similar things. "Thank you for speaking for us. We cried with your speech." Finally, someone said what we all feel. But there were other messages, 2 messages I didn't expect. One was from Pedro, Veronica's father. It said, "Julian, I have no words to apologize. I allowed my daughter to treat you badly, and I never said anything. I always knew you were a good man. I'm sorry," I didn't reply. The damage was already done and late apologies don't change the past. Another message was from Rosalia, Veronica's sister. It was longer. Julie and I saw the ceremony. Veronica left the hall crying. Franco and Paula also left. They're devastated, especially Veronica. I know I don't deserve for you to listen to me, but I need you to know something. I was the one who sent you that screenshot 2 years ago. I did it because what she was doing seemed unfair. I always respected you. I always thought my sister was making the mistake of her life, and today it was proven I was right. You're an extraordinary man, and she lost the opportunity of a lifetime. I put my phone away. I didn't need to read anymore. Those people had 2 years to say something, to do something to show they cared. Now that I'd had my moment of triumph, now that there was public validation, now they all wanted to be my allies. But alliances that only appear in victory are not real alliances. Everything okay? Laura asked, noticing my expression. Yes, just messages from people who now remember I exist. She nodded with understanding. That's how the world works. When you're down, you're alone. When you're up, everyone wants to ride on your success. That night when I got back to my apartment, I sat on the sofa with the award plaque in my hands. I read it over and over. State Award for Excellence in Education awarded to Professor Julian Marquez for his extraordinary contribution to the educational transformation of marginalized communities. I thought about Mr. Marquez, my teacher. I thought about how he never received an award like this, never appeared on television, was never publicly recognized, but he changed my life and probably the lives of hundreds of other students. The true impact of a teacher is invisible. It's the decisions their students make 20 years later. It's the careers they choose. It's the values they pass on to their own children. It's a domino effect that continues long after the teacher is gone, and I was just one piece in that infinite chain. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to do it. Julian, it was Veronica's voice. It sounded broken, barely a whisper. What do you want, Veronica? I need to talk to you, please. Just let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You said what you felt 2 years ago. I lived with the consequences. You now live with yours. Julian, please. I was confused. I was obsessed with superficial things. Franco filled my head with ideas about success and money. I never really thought you weren't worthy. Veronica. My voice was calm but firm. You wrote verbatim that you no longer considered me your husband. You excluded me from a family gathering as if I were embarrassing. You lived 2 years without contacting me, and only now when I appear on television receiving an award now you call me. Silence on the other end. Then sobs. I made the worst mistake of my life, she said through tears. I lost you. I lost a good man, a man who really loved what he did, a man with values. And for what? For a car, for a house, none of that matters now. It should have mattered then, Veronica, when you needed me to feel less alone. When I was there every night, willing to listen to you, to support you, to build something together, but you chose to measure me with the wrong yardstick. Is there any chance we could talk in person, that you could give me a chance to show you I've changed? I thought about her question. I thought about the 15 years we spent together. I thought about the woman who fell in love with me when I was just a young teacher with dreams. And then I thought about the woman who wrote that message despising me in front of her entire family. No, Veronica, there's no chance. Not because I hate you, but because I finally learned to value myself. And someone who values me doesn't need an award to see me. They don't need external validation to respect what I do. They see me always, not just when it's convenient. Julian, I wish you the best. I really do. I hope you find what you're looking for. But it's not me. It'll never be me again. I hung up before she could reply. I blocked her number and felt as if I had let go of a weight I'd been carrying for years. Laura was right from the beginning. People without character always come back when they see success. But true character is in rejecting that return, in maintaining your boundaries, in remembering who was there when there were no cameras or applause. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a long time. I dreamed of Mr. Marquez. In the dream, he looked at me with pride and said, "You did well, Julian. You honored what I taught you." I woke up with tears in my eyes, but with peace in my heart. The days following the ceremony were strange. The video of my speech had gone viral on social media. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Teachers from all over the country shared the video with messages like, "This is what we all feel." Someone finally said it. But there were also other types of comments. People criticizing me for publicly exposing my ex-wife. That was cruel, some said. You could have been the bigger man and not mentioned her. You humiliated her unnecessarily. Laura read those comments one afternoon while we were having coffee in my apartment. How interesting, she said ironically. She can humiliate you in private for years, exclude you from family gatherings, tell everyone you're worthless, but when you tell the truth publicly, you're the bad guy. I don't regret what I said, I replied, but I didn't do it to hurt her either. I did it to heal, to close that chapter. And you closed it perfectly, she said, touching my hand on the table. That simple gesture meant more than 1,000 words. In the following weeks, the program received more attention than ever. Companies wanted to make donations, universities offered collaborations. The government announced we would expand to 60 more communities by the next year. I was still the same Julian. I drove the same old car, lived in the same small apartment, ate at the same modest restaurants. But now there was something different in how I saw myself. There was dignity, there was certainty, there was peace. One Saturday morning a month after the ceremony, Laura and I took her kids to the park. Brian had turned 16 and Felipe 11. They both treated me as if I were part of the family, as if I had always been there. While the kids played soccer, Laura and I sat on a bench under a tree. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said, looking at her kids. "Of course. Have you ever thought about trying again, I mean with someone new, a relationship?" The question took me by surprise. Honestly, I haven't thought much about it. I've been so focused on work, on healing, on finding myself. I know, and it's admirable, but Julian, you deserve to be loved by someone who sees your worth without needing awards or recognition. Someone who sees you when you're grading exams at 11 at night. Someone who understands that your wealth isn't in your bank account, but in the impact you have. I looked at her. Her brown eyes shone with something I hadn't seen before. Or maybe it had always been there, and I had been too broken to notice. "Do you know someone like that?" I asked softly. She smiled. "Maybe." We didn't say anything else that afternoon. It wasn't necessary. Some things are understood without words. Meanwhile, Veronica kept trying to contact me. She created new phone numbers, sent me messages via email, even showed up once at the school where I used to work, but security didn't let her in. Isabella showed me the security cameras. Veronica had arrived in a new car, dressed elegantly, clearly prepared to impress. When they told her she couldn't see me without an appointment, she fell apart. She cried in the parking lot for 20 minutes before leaving. "Do you want us to ban her permanently?" Isabella asked. "It's not necessary," I replied. "Eventually she'll understand there's nothing here for her." But there was someone else who didn't give up. Franco. One afternoon as I was leaving a meeting downtown, Franco was waiting for me outside. He looked different, thinner, less arrogant. His expensive suit couldn't hide the tiredness in his eyes. "Julian, I need to talk to you," he said, approaching. "We have nothing to talk about, Franco. Please, just 5 minutes. I owe you an apology." Something in his tone made me stop. It wasn't the boastful Franco from the family dinners. It was a broken man. "Okay, 5 minutes." We went to a nearby coffee shop. We sat at a table in the back. Franco ordered a coffee he didn't touch. "I don't know where to start," he said, looking at the cup. "I guess with the obvious, I treated you badly. I made you feel small. I mocked you in front of everyone, and I did it because..." He stopped. His hands were shaking. "Because I was afraid of being like you," he continued. "I was afraid people would see that my success was empty, that my money meant nothing, that at the end of the day, I hadn't helped anyone, I hadn't changed any lives, I hadn't built anything that would last beyond my bank account." I looked at him without interrupting. "When I saw you on that stage," he said with a broken voice, "when I heard about the 2,000 lives you changed, I realized something terrible. I realized I'm 42 years old, and I can't name a single person whose life I've improved through my existence. Not one. My company sells products. I make money, I buy things, and when I die, no one will remember me. But you, Julian, you'll live forever in those 2,000 students and in everyone they touch." Tears were running down his face now. "Do you know what's the worst part? That I convinced Veronica you were worthless. I put it in her head that success is measured by money. I was the one who encouraged her to leave you, and now she's destroyed. I'm empty, and you're living the life that really matters." He took a deep breath. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know you were right. You were always right, and I was a fool for not seeing it." He stood up to leave, but I stopped him. "Franco, wait." He sat down again, surprised. "I'm not going to tell you it's all okay, because it's not. You hurt me. Veronica hurt me. And those wounds took a long time to heal. But I'm going to tell you something you might need to hear." I leaned forward. "It's never too late to find meaning. You're 42 years old. You have resources. You have connections instead of just selling products. Why not sell products that help communities? Why not use your company to create scholarships? Why not hire young people from tough neighborhoods and give them a chance? His eyes lit up slightly. Money isn't bad, Franco. The problem is when it becomes the only thing that matters. But money in the hands of someone who wants to do good can change the world. You're telling me there's still hope for me. There's hope for everyone, but you have to choose. You can keep accumulating things that mean nothing, or you can start building a legacy that matters. Franco cried in that coffee shop. A deep cry of years of emptiness finally acknowledged. When he calmed down, he shook my hand. Thank you, Julian. I didn't deserve your kindness. Nobody deserves anything, I replied, but we all need grace. He left promising he would think about what we talked about. I don't know if he did. I never heard from him again, but I had done my part. I had shown that true success isn't about crushing those who hurt you, it's about maintaining your humanity, even when they don't deserve it. 3 months after the ceremony, my life had found a new rhythm. The program was still growing. We now reached 80 communities and more than 4,000 students. I had hired a team of 10 committed teachers who shared my vision. Laura and I had started something. We didn't call it a relationship yet, but it was more than friendship. We had dinner together 3 times a week. On weekends, we did things with her kids. There was laughter, there were deep conversations, there was an ease I never had with Veronica. One night after Brian and Felipe went to bed, Laura and I stayed in her living room drinking tea. You know what I like most about you? She said suddenly. What? That you never pretend to be something you're not. You still drive that old car, even though you could buy a better one now with the raise they gave you. You still wear the same gray suit to all the important meetings. You're still Julian. I wouldn't know how to be anyone else, I replied honestly. I know, and that's why you're special. She moved closer and took my hand. Julian, I don't want to pressure you. I know you're still healing, but I need you to know something. I see you. I've always seen you. I didn't need an award or a viral speech to know who you are. I felt something warm in my chest. Laura, I see you too, and these months with you have been the happiest I've had in years. So can we try this officially, without rushing, without pressure, just to see where it takes us? I'd love that, I said. And I meant it completely. We kissed that night for the first time. It was soft, honest, full of promise. It was the kind of kiss that doesn't seek to impress, but to connect. Meanwhile, the world kept spinning. The video of my speech had reached over 5 million views. Teachers from other countries wrote to me, sharing their own stories of being underestimated. Some sent me photos of themselves crying while watching the video. Finally, someone said what we all feel. They repeated over and over, but with fame came complications too. Journalists wanted to interview me constantly. TV shows invited me. Companies wanted me to be their spokesperson for advertising campaigns about education. I rejected most of them. I hadn't become a teacher to be famous, I had become a teacher to teach. The media attention was a side effect, not the goal. However, I accepted some interviews when I felt they could help the cause of education. In one of them, a journalist asked me about Veronica. Professor Julian, your ex-wife, has made statements on social media saying she always supported you and that you distorted the story. What's your response to that? I had seen those statements. Veronica had created new social media accounts trying to control the damage to her reputation. She said the family group message was taken out of context, that she was going through a difficult time, that I had abandoned her when she needed me most. I'm not going to get into a war of words, I replied calmly. I shared my truth. I have the evidence of that truth saved, but my intention was never to destroy her. My intention was to heal and help other teachers feel valued. If she needs to rewrite history to be able to sleep at night, that's her right. I've already moved on. The journalist insisted, but doesn't it bother you that she's lying publicly? The truth is like oil on water, it always rises to the surface. The people who really know me know what happened. The people who know her also know. The rest, the strangers on the internet, their opinion doesn't affect my daily life. I'm too busy changing students' lives to fight battles on social media. That answer also went viral. The truth is like oil on water became a phrase people repeated. One Saturday afternoon, 4 months after the ceremony, I was at Laura's house helping Felipe with his math homework when the doorbell rang. Laura went to open it. I heard voices at the door, a tense conversation. I went out to see what was happening. At the door was Pedro, Veronica's father. He looked older, tired, defeated. Julian, he said when he saw me, please, I need to talk to you, just a few minutes. Laura looked at me, asking with her eyes if she should let him in. I nodded. Pedro came in, and we sat in the living room. Laura discreetly went to the kitchen with her kids. Thank you for seeing me, Pedro began. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after how we treated you. What do you need, Pedro? It's Veronica. She's not well, Julian. Not well at all. Since the ceremony, she hasn't been the same. She quit her job. She doesn't leave her apartment. She doesn't talk to anyone. Rosalia is worried. I'm worried. I felt a pang of something. It wasn't guilt, it was sadness for a person I once loved who was now suffering. I'm sorry for her, I really am, but I don't know what you want me to do. She needs to talk to you, she needs your forgiveness. She can't move on without it. I took a deep breath. Pedro, my forgiveness isn't going to heal what's broken in Veronica. She's not depressed because I haven't forgiven her. She's depressed because she finally had to face who she really is, because her value system collapsed, because she realized she measured everything with the wrong ruler. But if you told her you forgive her, I've already forgiven her, Pedro. I forgave her months ago, not for her, but for me. Because carrying resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. But my forgiveness doesn't mean I have to be in her life. It doesn't mean I have to be her emotional lifesaver. Pedro lowered his head. She says she made the worst mistake of her life, letting you go. She probably did, but that mistake was hers, and the consequences are hers too. I can't fix what she broke in herself. So there's nothing you can do. Tell her to seek professional help. A therapist, someone who can help her rebuild her sense of worth without depending on external validation. Tell her to find purpose in helping others instead of just accumulating things. Tell her the path to healing doesn't go through me, it goes through herself. Pedro was quiet for a long moment, then he stood up. You're right, I just hoped I don't know what I hoped. You hoped I could fix your daughter's pain, but no one can do that except her. I walked him to the door. Before he left, he turned. For what it's worth, Julian, I always knew you were a good man. I should have said it when it mattered. I should have defended you. I didn't, and that cowardice haunts me. We've all been cowards at some point, Pedro. The important thing is to learn. He left. Laura came out of the kitchen and hugged me without saying anything. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 words. That night, lying in my bed, I thought about Veronica. Part of me felt compassion for her, but another part, the part that had healed, knew that her pain was necessary. It was the pain of growth, the pain of finally seeing the truth. And my role in her story was already over. A full year had passed since that ceremony that changed everything. The program now reached 120 communities and more than 6,000 students. It had gained international recognition. Universities in other countries wanted to replicate our model, but the most important thing to me wasn't the numbers or the awards. It was the letter I received from a student named Maria from a rural community we visited at the beginning of the program. She was 14 when I met her. Now she was 16, and she was writing to me from college. She had gotten a full scholarship to study medicine. Professor Julian, the letter said, you told me my background doesn't determine my destiny. Those words changed my life. I'm going to be a doctor, and when I am, I'm going to go back to my community and help people who don't have access to medical care. I'm going to be for others what you were for me. Thank you for seeing in me what I couldn't see. I cried reading that letter. Laura was with me when it arrived. She cried too. This is what it means to be a teacher, she said, taking my hand. This is real success. Laura and I had been officially a couple for 6 months. There was no drama, no games, no conditions. She loved me for who I was. I loved her for who she was. Her kids had completely accepted me. Brian was now 17 and talking about studying education in college because he wanted to be like me. Felipe at 14 asked me for advice on everything from homework to problems with friends. We had become a family without papers, without ceremonies, just with constant presence and genuine love. One Sunday afternoon, while Laura and I were cooking in her kitchen, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer. Julian, it was a woman's voice I didn't recognize immediately. Who's this? It's Veronica. My body tensed. Laura noticed my change of expression and came closer. Veronica, we already talked about this. I have nothing more to say. I know, but I'm not calling you to ask for another chance. I'm calling to say something I should have said a long time ago. There was a silence. Then she continued with a voice that sounded different, more mature, calmer. I've been in therapy for a whole year. I worked on myself, and I finally understood something. I didn't love you. Julian, I loved the idea of being married. I loved the security, but I didn't love you. Because if I had loved you, I would have seen what everyone else saw. I would have seen your kindness, your dedication, your huge heart. I listened without interrupting. I measured your worth with money because I was empty inside, because I thought material things would fill that void. But they didn't. And when I lost you, when I saw what you really were, and what I had wasted, that void became bigger. Her voice broke slightly. I'm not calling you to come back to me. I know that's never going to happen. I'm calling to ask for your forgiveness for real, with no hidden agenda, no hope of reconciliation, just to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making you feel less when you were always more. I'm sorry for being so blind, and I'm sorry it took all this for me to wake up. I took a deep breath. Veronica, I appreciate these words. I really do, and I forgive you. I had already forgiven you, but it's good to hear you acknowledge the damage. There's something else you need to know, she continued. I started volunteering in an adult literacy program. I don't earn anything. I do it because I finally understood what you always knew, that helping others is the only thing that really matters. I'm not good at it yet, but I'm trying to be better. I felt something like pride. I'm glad to hear that, Veronica. Seriously, I know we can never be friends, but I wanted you to know that your example, even your rejection, taught me more than 15 years of marriage. It taught me that a person's worth isn't in what they have, but in what they give. We all deserve second chances to be better, I said. I wish you the best on your journey. Thank you, Julian. And please tell Laura she has a good man. Don't make the mistake I made. She hung up before I could answer. I stood there with the phone in my hand, processing what had just happened. Laura hugged me. Are you okay? Yes, I think it's finally okay. She's okay. I'm okay. Everything's okay. That night we had a family dinner. Brian told us about his science project. Felipe talked about a girl he liked at school. Laura and I looked at each other from time to time with that complicity that only couples who understand each other without words have. After dinner, while Laura took Felipe to his guitar lesson, Brian stayed with me, helping me wash the dishes. Professor Julian, he said suddenly, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you going to marry my mom? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask? Because she's happier with you than I ever saw her with my dad. And you're happier with her. And Felipe, and I think you'd be a good stepdad. Well, you're already like our stepdad, but it would be nice if it were official. My heart filled with warmth. Is that what you guys want? Yes, but don't tell Mom yet. I don't want to ruin the surprise if you decide to do it. I laughed. Your secret is safe with me. That conversation made me think. I'd been divorced for a year, 6 months with Laura. Was it too soon, or when you know you just know? 2 weeks later, I took Laura to dinner at a modest but cozy restaurant. Nothing extravagant, it wasn't my style. She wore a lavender-colored dress, simple, beautiful. During dinner, we talked about everything, the program, her kids, our dreams, and at dessert, I took her hand across the table. Laura, I want to tell you something. Sounds serious, she said with a curious smile. Last year was the hardest of my life, but it was also the one that taught me the most. It taught me that true love doesn't put conditions, that real success is waking up every day knowing your life matters, that family isn't just blood but presence. Her eyes started to shine. You were there when I was worthless to the world, when I was just a divorced teacher living on your sofa. You saw me when there were no cameras or awards. And that's the kind of love I've been looking for all my life without knowing it. I took a small box out of my pocket. It wasn't an expensive ring, it was a simple silver ring with a small stone. It cost $200, all I could afford. I can't offer you mansions or luxury cars, but I can offer you loyalty, respect, and genuine love every day of my life. Laura, will you marry me? She cried. She nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Just close family and intimate friends. Isabella was there. The teachers from the program. Brian and Felipe were my best men. There was no luxury or ostentation, just love. And when we exchanged vows, when I looked into Laura's eyes and promised to love her every day of my life, I felt something I never felt with Veronica. I felt complete peace. I felt I was finally where I was supposed to be. 2 years have passed since then. The program now reaches 200 communities and more than 12,000 students. I won another state award. I wrote a book on educational methodologies that's used in universities, but none of that defines me. What defines me is the letter from Maria telling me she graduated from medical school. What defines me are the nights helping Brian with his college applications. What defines me is Felipe calling me dad for the first time without realizing it. What defines me is Laura taking my hand every morning and telling me, "Good morning, my love." A month ago, I received an invitation to speak at an international education conference. The theme was measuring success beyond money. I accepted. In my speech, I told my whole story from Veronica's message to the ceremony, with the governor from depression to peace from rejection to true love. And I ended with this. They call me a simple teacher, and they were right. I am simple. I don't have mansions. I don't have expensive cars. I don't have millions in the bank, but I have 12,000 students whose lives I touched. I have a wife who loves me unconditionally. I have 2 sons who chose me as their father. And I have the certainty that when I die, I will have left the world a little better than I found it. If that's being simple, then I'm happy being simple. The entire auditorium stood up. Applause that lasted 5 minutes. But what really mattered was Laura in the front row crying with pride with our sons on either side. That night in the hotel, Laura hugged me and whispered, "You're the richest man I know." And she was right. I was rich, only my wealth couldn't be deposited in a bank. It lived in transformed hearts and changed futures in genuine love. Veronica despised me for being a simple teacher until the whole world knew my name. But the irony is that even if no one had ever known my name, even if I had never won an award, even if I had died in anonymity, my life would have had value. Because true success isn't measured in what you accumulate, it's measured in what you give. And I gave everything I had, my time, my knowledge, my heart. And in the end, that was more than enough.